What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today we're going to talk about our 13% and those crime statistics, right? Because white supremacists and the coons that work for white supremacists and the unintelligent black people that unknowingly repeat the same information that the coons for pay and the white supremacists preach, they are giving bad misinformation about the crime statistics. In fact, African Americans are some of the safest people in the world. Okay? We're some of the safest people in the world. And where black people reside, crime has been going down steadily over the decades. And those white folks who are being fed this false information, all right? White folks who are being fed, because keep in mind, this information, this misinformation, this propaganda is meant for white folks. Is meant to be fed to uneducated white folks. Is meant to be fed to those rural white folks in those Republican states, right? So they can be afraid of us. This is the weapon and the propaganda they use for them to be afraid of us, so that they can think of us in a certain view, right? But what's happening is when they do that, they are ignoring the crime within their communities. They're ignoring the danger within their communities because they're focused on us. They're focused in the wrong direction. You see, the rich white people, right, and their media handlers, they make sure they take the white gaze and point it in the other direction, right? So while they're looking over here, they're being robbed over here, right? White men, historically, are the most dangerous, violent criminals on this planet. It doesn't come close. No, there is no second. You got white men at the top, and then you got white men right underneath him. Okay, that's how dangerous they are, right? And in America, white men commit the most crimes. And you know who they're committing crimes against? Other white men. You know who else they commit the most crimes against? White women. And you know who also they commit most of the crimes against? Little white girls. And you know who also they commit most crimes against? Little white boys. So the victims of white men are other white men, white women, white little girls, and white little boys. But you see, they don't like to be held accountable. We're talking about the white criminals. So while they're willy-nilly, all right, victimizing, unabated, not being held accountable, you have white conservatives, right, like Tucker Carlson and all these, and Turning Point USA, the same place Candace Owens used to work for, by the way. And this is the same rhetoric Candace Owens used to pump out all the time, by the way. That's why she can't come back. You understand? Ain't no coming back for her, because she knowingly did this because they was doing this. They was making it rain on her. All she had to do is tear her community up, pretending like she was talking about accountability, when in fact, the white man who she opens and spreads her legs for is truly the criminal. You understand? So what I'm going to put here is a compilation of a few coons. Just get by the coons, all right? I just want to make an example that these are the coons, right? Some of the professional, paid, hired coons who throw their community under the bus for those green slave master dollars promissory notes, right? And then you're going to hear the white ones, the ones that you see, the usual suspects, repeating the same bullshit to try to make us look bad, right? So they're trying to kill two birds with one stone. They want to continue to make us look bad, and they want to hide their criminality. Especially since right now, the president of the United States is in a scandal because his former best friend, right, Jeffrey Epstein, he won't release the files, even though he said he was going to release the files. But he won't release the files because he knows his name's on the files, right? The Donald Trump, the guy who's known for being a pedophile, right? The guy who got sued for sexual assault, the criminal in the White House. That's how bad we done got it. That's what happens when you don't hold people accountable. Your president ends up being that guy, okay? So now he's trying to run. He fired the lawyer that prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein. That's how far gone we are in America, all right? The president of the United States is running away from his past right now. His best friend. Keep in mind, we jump on Meek Mills for being associated with P. Diddy. But we're not going to jump on Donald Trump having a best friend who likes him young. We know Donald Trump likes him young. He got a mail order bride, and she was the first lady. And she the first lady now. A high-priced mail order bride is the first lady, guys. Okay? A mail order bride is the first lady of the United States of America. Huh? Okay? So get that. He rode Jeffrey Epstein's plane for his campaign. Out of all the jets he can use his best friend Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Okay? Come on, guys. So without further ado, let's get to it. But keep in mind, I know how hard it is when you listen to these coons, you click off right away. Just go ahead and push through it, and then we're going to get to the real data. Anyway, that's all I got to say. This is Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
Half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year, there were 14,000 homicides. Not talking about suicides, I'm talking about homicides. Half of them were black, 96% of them black on black of that 7,000. Where's the Black Lives Matter people on that? In Baltimore, where Freddie Gray was killed. Freddie Gray died in a van. I shouldn't say was killed, died in a van. Yeah. You have a city that's 45% black. City council is 100% Democrat. The majority of city council is black. The top cop at the time was black. The number 2 cop was black. The majority of the command staff is black. The mayor is black. The AG is black. And yet here we are talking about racism. I mean, it's absurd.
The reason I talk about the black crime because black people are fewer in numbers than white folks are in this country, and yet they are committing most of the violent crime. They outnumber the white folks and anyone else when it comes to violent crime. And when I was growing up, I remember when black people were not carrying on like this, they had sense. And the reason that they did was because they believed in God, number one. They had families, fathers and mothers in the homes, and there was a sense of respect for everybody. But when the civil rights movement started, which was one of the worst things that ever happened to the blacks, other than abortion itself, and so I'm showing it because I'm hoping, and some are overcoming being black and being identified with groups. They're starting to take back their lives.
Well, here's a fact that is seldom heard: the homicide rate in states that voted Republican in the last presidential, over the last 25 years, has been much higher than the homicide rate in the Democratic states. It has been 133% is what it has been for 25 years. Out of those 25 years, you have been in more danger of homicide in a Republican state 24 of those 25 years. Now, that's something we don't hear very much. Right.
Black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population.
Yes,
about half of all prisoners are black.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes than whites do. They commit more murders, they commit more arsons, they commit more kidnappings. For example, blacks are 13% of the population and they commit 58% of all the murders.
Okay, let's talk about it. These are obviously racist claims, but I will respond to them as if Charlie Kirk were a reasonable person.
Black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population.
Yes,
about half of all prisoners are black.
Wrong. Just 38% of America's prison population is black. That's according to the U.S. government. But it makes you wonder why Charlie feels the need to add an additional 12% to the black prison population. Could it be because his bigoted talking points only work if he exaggerates them? If Charlie were actually looking for the race that makes up half the prison population in the U.S., he'd look no further than white people at 57%.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes than whites do.
Wrong. The word "so" is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes.
He's saying "so" as in therefore, as in one could conclude, but Charlie knows he's lying. Even if he hadn't just lied about the black prison population, Charlie is smart enough to know that correlation does not equal causation, but he's hoping that you don't know that. So he deploys the word "so" to make you think he's coming to an obvious conclusion.
Exactly.
So blacks
Instead, he's making an illogical, racist leap. Charlie knows that we don't have usable data about who commits crimes. It's impossible to have that data since so many crimes go both unreported and or unsolved. Charlie knows that we only have data about arrests and convictions. I'll come back to that data in a moment. What's painfully obvious is that Charlie Kirk isn't interested in understanding the statistics he so carelessly misquotes. He's interested in making bad faith arguments. Something that becomes even more obvious in his next point.
blacks are 13% of the population and they commit 58% of all the murders.
Wrong again, and loud this time. If Charlie were interested in honesty, he would have mentioned the other 1350 statistic. Yes, black people are about 13% of the population, but make up 53% of all criminal exonerations. In fact, black people make up 55% of all murder exonerations specifically. Black people are more likely than any other group in this country to be convicted of crimes they did not commit. And then people like you have the nerve to parade these stats around as though they prove something. The reality is that you probably know these stats, but you leave them out on purpose, because to bring that stat into this conversation would make some people think. And that's the last thing a person like you wants.
This idea that black people have to earn their way out of racism is completely backwards. So I understand you as saying that if, as the result of the actions of some people, a group has acquired the reputation for harming other people, then the negative attitudes and treatment the entire group receives is understandable and justified. And what's more, if that group wants those negative attitudes and treatments to change, they have to do better. I highly suggest that you re-examine this belief in light of the fact that at the point at which Europeans labeled black people black, and by extension labeled themselves white, they are the ones who proceeded to loot, kill, and grape their way around 84% of the world for centuries. Because I don't think you feel that it would justify if people of the global majority were to treat white people the way that white people have treated black people, and maybe consider yourself lucky that we don't. Now, with respect to these black crime rates that people like you so love to inflate, if racism were to cease to exist today, those crime rates would automatically and instantly drop, because we wouldn't have innocent black people being arrested and incarcerated for nothing, and we wouldn't have black people being arrested and incarcerated for infractions that white people get away with all the time. But also, if you systematically oppress a group of people for centuries, it will create negative behaviors, and it shows the infinite grace of black people that it hasn't created more. And what's more, the people that it harms the most are black people themselves. So if you want these crime rates to drop, it is racism that has to cease to exist first.
Every time racist people bring up the violence or crime rates in the black community, I always like to remind them of who's committing the most CSAM crimes. And if you don't know what CSAM stands for, it means child sexual abuse material. And I need people to understand there is a reason why people who are pedophiles or pedophiles get such short time, but somebody who is on drugs or sold drugs gets such an exorbitant amount of drugs, because there was this idea that the selling drugs or doing drugs at one point in time only affected black people, but when they started to see how many white people it was affecting, that's when they started decriminalizing it. It's the same thing with pedophiles. Most of the pedophiles or the CSAM people who are committing those crimes, what color are they? That's why they get such a short amount of time. And yes, violent crime is bad, but to me, committing violent crimes or crimes against children is one of the worst possible things that you can do. So I always bring that up every time they talk about, oh, your community has all this crime. I'm like, well, your community has all this CSAM that y'all decriminalize, and on top of decriminalizing it, they have private prisons, but they're not able to put people in the private prisons like they used to, because I believe the crime rates are going down. But one girl said, if they actually started filling the prisons up with people who committed CSAM and pedophiles against children, who do you think would be filling these prisons? White men. Why do you think for a lot of grape kits that they don't test them? I've heard of grape kits just sitting there for years. Who do you think it's going to come out the assailants were of the grape victims if they actually really started testing these grape kits? What color do you think they're going to be? Probably white men. That's why they don't test it. They don't want to put their own behind bars, and chances are a lot of these white men in positions of power have done those things. So next time somebody talks about the violent crime rates, you better talk about the CSAM. You better talk about the things that they do to children.
Statistics don't lie, Dwight says. They say black people are the overwhelming majority in violent attacks? Really? I swear I just did a video about this yesterday. If you go to the FBI's website and pull up crime in the United States and break it down by demographics, you will get this table, which is how many people are convicted for a crime by race. And you'll notice down at the bottom it says violent crime, which is everything from moida to grape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. It's all of those. And guess who's at the top? Because those are numbers, and you can see which number is biggest, right? But if you scroll over to a much smaller, easier to comprehend number, which is the percentages, you'll notice down there it says 67% for white people and only 30% for black people. So you're right. Statistics don't lie. You do. White people commit more crimes, more violent crimes in the United States than all other demographics put together.
Blacks commit more crimes than whites do.
Okay, well, first of all, what he means by blacks commit more crimes is, in fact, that African Americans are more often convicted of committing crimes in the United States than any other racial demographic, which is very different from what he said. All that indicates is that the so-called criminal justice system in the United States is primarily only effective in the selective investigation, prosecution, and conviction of African Americans and other so-called minorities, as opposed to investigating, prosecuting, and convicting white perpetrators. The statistics that he's citing are actually an evidence arguing racial bias in policing, in prosecution, and in trials. It's not an evidence of greater criminality along racial demographic lines, no. Rather, it's only the assignment of criminality that falls along racial lines. I mean, more than half of all violent crimes in the United States go unsolved, overwhelmingly the case in certain types of violent crimes. So we're not talking actually about a criminal justice system that works, that's actually effective, that's actually efficient, that actually does its job. What we have is a criminal justice system that disproportionately seems to only quote-unquote work when the perpetrators are not white. African-American victims of homicide, by the way, make up most of the victims of homicide cases that go unsolved, whereas most homicide cases in which the victim is white, those get solved. In other words, crimes against white people are more likely to get solved than crimes against African-American people or any other so-called minority group, a member of the global majority. And they're even more likely to get solved when the perpetrator of the crime happens to be African-American. So in other words, if you're a white victim, you're more likely to get justice, and if you're a white perpetrator, you're more likely to escape justice. That's the system, and that's all that is evidenced by what he's saying. So when you look at the number of unsolved crimes, it's not unreasonable to assume that the, say, 60% or so of violent crimes in America that never get solved, that those are very possibly crimes committed by white people against African-American people, or against other so-called minority groups. So rather than saying blacks commit more crimes than anyone else in America, it would be more honest to say that no one who commits a crime in America is more likely to be punished for that crime than an African-American. And in fact, it's also more likely for an African-American person to be wrongfully convicted of a crime of which they are accused. And it's more likely for them to even be punished for that, even when they have been proven innocent. And you can look at the case right now of Marcellus Williams. So the statistics that he's citing actually only substantiate the belief that the so-called criminal justice system in the United States is a major component of what you can call a systematic domestic ethnic cleansing program in America, being carried out against African Americans and other members of the global majority. That's all that is evidenced by the statistics that he's citing. And this, in fact, demonstrates a vastly greater degree of criminality than anything that he mentioned. And I would go further to say that this speaker himself, with the statistics that he's mentioning and the interpretation that he's putting on those statistics, that he himself occupies a propaganda role in that ethnic cleansing system, for which, in my opinion, he could and should be prosecuted under international law. So I really would hope that people would take this more seriously and understand the gravity of what so-called minority groups, members of the global majority, what they are facing and what they are enduring, and the human rights violations that are committed against them in the United States, that you would take that more seriously, so that when you see someone who is clearly playing a propaganda role in support of what, again, does constitute an ethnic cleansing program in America, when you see someone who is occupying a role of propaganda in support of that system, normalizing that system, justifying that system, rationalizing that system, understand that this person is a criminal. And inshallah, one day they will face justice for that, and should not be regarded simply as someone who is airing offensive or controversial views. No, you should take this more seriously, and not simply use it as an opportunity to have a debate with someone like this. They shouldn't be debated. They should be
Wait. Before you go, for all my subscribers and philanthropists out there, I'm building a solar power community water bowl system in Nigeria. It's going to cost between $5,000 and $6,000. I'm trying to raise money. If you want to participate and help me build this solar power water system, please donate to the Cash App and put solar water in the notes. Solar water in the notes. I'll put PayPal, Stripe, and Zelle. Anyway, thank you. That's all I got to say. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out. Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.